This is Business Week Armenia, CivilNet's weekly business digest. Here are this week's top stories. The company that operates Armenia's biggest copper and gold mines has indicated it will expand its operations in the country. The president of Geopro Mining said the company is considering building a copper smelter in Armenia, as well as undertaking additional efforts to modernize its mines. Two large international companies are developing a preliminary feasibility study for the construction of the smelter, Rahman Khoudali told the Armen Press News Agency, without elaborating. Geopro Mining operates the Zangezur Copper Molybdenum Combine, Armenia's largest mine, as well as the Sotk mine, the country's biggest gold producer. The mines employ thousands of people and contribute hundreds of millions of dollars every year to Armenia's state coffers. Last year, the Zangezur mine alone accounted for around 3% of the Armenian government's total tax revenues. 2 years ago, Geopro Mining, which is ultimately controlled by Russian oligarch Roman Tratsenko, purchased a majority stake in the Zangezur mine and then immediately ceded a 15% stake in the mine to the Armenian government without explanation. Armenian officials have repeatedly refused to comment on the matter. Khoudali stressed to Armen Press that the state is not directly involved in the operational management of the enterprise. He refused to elaborate on the company's decision last month to indefinitely suspend open-pit operations at the Sotk mine due to repeated cross-border shelling from Azerbaijan, saying only he is closely cooperating with the Armenian government on this issue. The Sotk gold deposit straddles the border between Armenia's Geghar-Kunik region and the Kelbajar district, which Yerevan ceded to Baku after the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. In other mining news, the company with the rights to Armenia's long-stalled Amosar Gold Mine expects operations to begin this year. That is according to the executive director of Lydian Armenia, who made the comments to the Sputnik Armenia news agency. If operations begin this year, Amulsar will already be producing gold next year, Haik Aloyan added. In February, the Armenian government signed a $250 million memorandum of understanding with Lydian and the Eurasian Development Bank, greenlighting operations at Amulsar. In return, Lydian handed over 12.5% of its shares in the mine to the Armenian government. Lydian broke ground at Amulsar in 2016, but development was indefinitely suspended 2 years later when environmental activists and residents of nearby communities began staging blockades of the mine entrance. After years of delay, the Armenian government now says it wants to revive the project. For its part, the Eurasian Development Bank has signaled it will decide whether or not to move forward with financing a large portion of the funds needed to put Amulsar into operation only after an environmental impact assessment is completed. Aloyan told Sputnik he understands the assessment will be ready next month. In other news from the Eurasian Development Bank, the financial institution is forecasting Armenia's dram currency will remain overvalued through at least the end of the year. By the end of the year, the Armenian currency may weaken somewhat compared to the current level, but nevertheless, the overvaluation of the Armenian dram will remain until the end of the year, the Kazakhstan-based bank said in its latest macroeconomic regional update. It cited high capital inflows to Armenia, strong export growth, and record-high tourist numbers. The dram has substantially increased in value since last year, which saw massive inflows of Russian capital to Armenian banks. The dram strengthening has resulted in slashed revenues for Armenian exporters and for many of the country's tech companies, which typically receive payments from overseas clients in dollars or other foreign currencies. Since the beginning of this year, the dram has further strengthened by about 2% against the dollar and euro and by more than 18% against the Russian ruble. The ruble is now approaching an all-time record low exchange rate against the dram. And finally, tax collection in Armenia in the first half of 2023 is up by almost 25% year-on-year. That is according to new figures from Armenia's Tax and Customs Agency. The State Revenue Committee said the Armenian government collected about $2.86 billion in taxes in the first 6 months of this year, more than $561 million more than it collected in the same period last year. Armenia's state coffers have expanded significantly since last year, when the country's economy grew by double-digit figures amid massive inflows of Russian labor and capital. In 2022, tax collection was up by about 21% year-on-year. Earlier this year, Armenia's tax chief told CivilNet his agency was working to improve tax administration and discipline in the country. To that end, Rustam Badasyan said he plans to crack down on Armenia's untaxed shadow economy, estimated at about $260 million, or just over 1% of the country's gross domestic product. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground in Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, and the region.